Hello, my name is Kenya Ramsey, and I'm an educator. I've been teaching for 10 years, and currently I teach first grade in an inclusion setting. I'm also studying at Kennesaw State University to earn a specialist degree in education in the field of instructional technology. This video is a summary of my Capstone project, the research completed on behalf of the project, and the findings that resulted. I'd like to thank you in advance for your time and attention. The title of my capstone project is How Can Technology Help Teachers with the Process to Qualify Students with Special Needs? As previously mentioned, I teach in an inclusion setting. In my classroom, there are children in general and special education learning together. My daily goal and responsibility to all of my students is to equip them for academic success in spite of whatever learning hindrances or obstacles they possess. Because of the number of various needs in a given classroom, technology is often relied upon to meet many students' needs at once. The young learners of today are referred to as citizens of the digital age, and that is because of the undeniable presence and impact of technology on the world as we know it. Technology has impacted nearly every area of our lives, yet in the world of education it has not been fully embraced as the advantageous tool and partner it has the potential to be. While studying at Kennesaw about how to effectively use technology tools in education, this knowledge began to intersect with my need as an educator to service all of my students. And so I began to ponder more about how to use technology to lessen the academic performance gap between my general and special education students. Within the last 10 to 20 years, there's been more stringent regulation passed, and more accountability methods have been put in place for educators of children with special needs. One example is the Child Find Act. This act mandates that school districts have a process in place by which they identify children with special needs. That process in my school district is known as Response to Intervention, or RTI. Teachers are expected to enlist students in the RTI process when they notice adequate academic progress is not being made at a satisfactory rate. Furthermore, there's an accountability team that checks with teachers periodically regarding the strategies that are being used with the students on RTI, the records keeping portion and the documentation that's being kept up. And the team also collects the documentation on all RTI students at the end of the year. They log the information and then pass it on to the student's teacher the following year. As I began to learn more through the program and then apply what I was learning in my daily practice as an educator, it became glaringly apparent how relevant this topic was to what I do every day. As a result, I decided that this would be the topic of my capstone project and began with 3 main tasks. The first was to locate documented research and articles related to the topic. The second was to conduct interviews, and then lastly to issue a survey. Initially, as I began to think about the process as a whole and begin to locate articles, I must admit that I was slightly overwhelmed because there was by no means any shortage of articles. And part of that is because I started with the broad topic of technology and education. I just didn't want to limit my access to what was out there. So I found hundreds of articles, and I read probably close to 100 articles on everything from technology in education, or in the classroom rather, just different types of technologies to have in the classroom, using different technologies, various ways to differentiate education, using technology specifically with regards to learners with special needs, using technology to initiate and facilitate learning through games and through play, and even articles on technology to teach teachers and ways to teach educators how to use technology effectively in the process of educating children. Here before you is a list of some of the most influential articles on my research. While I was reading, and I'll get into shortly, while I was reading the articles, after I read quite a few, I began to create a needs assessment or survey for teachers. And so it's from those surveys that I finally was able to narrow down the study. And so as a result of that, these are the most important articles that kind of help steer the research. As for the methodology in this project, I did use a mixed methods model. I did interview the data accountability team, and from their interviews, I collected qualitative data. The survey that was given to teachers, classroom teachers that facilitate the RTI process, contained forced response questions or forced response items, and then open-ended questions. And as a result of the survey, I gathered quantitative data as well as a more qualitative data. And so that's why this was a mixed methods approach. The entire research project was over the course of about 90 days. Within the 90 days, I collected data for about 2 weeks. I took some time to review and analyze the teachers' perception data and the interviews, go over the interviews or re-review them. I also took some time to research different procedures that would address teachers' grave concerns, and then devise a plan on how to implement those procedures. Gave the teachers some time to use the system, and then finally wrapped everything up with a second interview with the data team to note the changes that occurred since the new systems and procedures had been implemented. Continuing with methodology with regard to reliability and validity, I took extreme measures to make sure that the results were reliable and valid, both with Kennesaw's own research process through their board. That was the first step. And then once approved, I took all precautions with regard to ensuring confidentiality and anonymity to participants so that they would feel safe and comfortable sharing with me honestly, because their information was really the heart of my research. So I did that in a number of ways, or I took a few steps. The first one was prior to administering the survey. It was done openly to the entire certified staff. I had previously sent them the appropriate contact information if they wanted to verify that I actually was conducting a research project and that it was a valid research project through university. The interviews with the data accountability team were one-on-one. They were not in a group or a team. I wanted everyone to feel comfortable sharing. I also let them know, both the data team and the teachers, that the participation was voluntary, it was anonymous, and the information was not being collected for school administration. So I did ask them not to put their names on the survey, and I also had them complete the surveys. Once they completed the surveys, they were to place them in a sealed container. The analysis of the data, both interviews and surveys, is as follows. During the pre-interviews, it was shared with me that about 1/3 of our entire certified staff were not diligent with performing the RTI process. RTI has three main components, but teachers are responsible for two. The first one is to perform the strategies, to facilitate the intervention strategies to help lessen the gap of the student who is behind. The second is to document what they are doing, the strategies being facilitated, and the results of those strategies. The third step of the process is to take the information before a board of educators and also the parents and the psychologists and different school officials to take the documentation before them so a decision can be made. So the final step cannot be completed until the first two steps are done correctly. So with that in mind, the data accountability team told me that about 1/3 were not diligent with performing steps 1 and 2. Now, looking more closely at that, we came to find that 33% is broken up in this way. About 15% of them are not doing anything, strategies or documentation. So 85% of the teacher population, 85% they are doing the strategies. However, of that 85% doing and facilitating the strategies and interventions, 20% of that group is failing to document what they're doing. So that group, coupled with the teachers that are not doing anything, is how we get the 33%. According to the surveys, I found that the teachers that are not, 90% advise they are doing strategies. So it's a little bit off from the accountability team, but 90% of those who completed the survey said that they are facilitating and conducting the strategies and interventions, but they do find it difficult to complete all of the paperwork and documentation. The feedback from the teachers was ultimately why I decided to alter my capstone from using technology to aid special needs students to focusing on aiding the teachers of those students to become more efficient in qualifying the students for special education. As mentioned before, documentation is crucial, and if neglected severely, it can and will hinder the progress of a child being properly identified and having their needs met. Once I received the information from teachers and analyzed the data, I researched and found 3 viable technology tools to try out. After a brief presentation to administration and the accountability team, they decided on what we call an RTI portal, and at the end of that trial period, our documentation inefficiency rate decreased greatly. It decreased from about 33% of staff to less than 5%. So over 95% of teachers are now, or did at the end of that time, complete documentation on time when we switched to an online tool. As a result of this capstone project, I'm walking away with a few takeaways. The first is that implementing anything, any kind of change, can be successful with an adequate plan. An adequate plan has a couple of key components, and these are also takeaways. The first is the person implementing the change or initiating the change does need to clearly communicate to all participants the upcoming change, its purpose, and the expectations. Secondly, there does need to be follow-up to prepare participants for success by setting up an initial training and several follow-up subsequent trainings. After our initial training with the new system, we had interactive small group trainings with people who were familiar with the new system enough to help strugglers. And lastly, overall, this capstone project, as well as my time with Kennesaw, has shown me or verified for me, technology is here to stay, and it works well in and with education when it is provided within an atmosphere and an aura that invites and facilitates success. I'd like to thank you for your time again and your attention. I hope that you heard something enlightening.